I am the only pure snow princess of the Emojiao tribe. My mother is always nagging in my ear that the pure bloodline of our tribe must never be broken. Especially not on my watch, but the guys in the sea are all such eyesores. I really couldn't bring myself to even look at them. So, I simply decided to take matters into my own hands. I went out and kidnapped a handsome fellow. It happened that the Tsunlong, the treasure ship of the human ship king, was sailing through the East Sea. With a wave of my hand, I summoned a massive wave, sinking the ship instantly. I spirited the man away to the deep sea. 3 years later, I was cradling an egg, leisurely swimming past my mother's coral shop. Hee hee, where did you get that pearl egg? It looks quite high quality. It'll be perfect to grind into powder for my face mask. I patted the shell proudly. I laid this myself. You laid it yourself? Then you better hold on to it tight. The rest of mother's words got stuck in her throat. A thunderous roar of realization echoed through the deep sea. Watch out. Get your tail over here right now. A soft crack came from the egg in my arms. The shell was actually breaking open. A little fellow poked his head out from the shell. He had a snow-white little face, eyes like black grapes, moist little lips, and those shallow dimples. His smile was sweet enough to melt anyone's heart. I was stunned. These human genes are way too top tier. Mama. I froze instantly, even forgetting to flick my tail. The eggshells fell and scattered everywhere. The pearl-like fragments drifted in the seawater. This brat chose to hatch exactly when mother was furious. I fear he's a natural-born troublemaker. I held the little mare boy and swam back, flicking my tail. The little guy snuggled in my arms, his tiny tail gently brushing against my arm. It made my own anger dissipate. What could I do? Why are you shouting? You almost scared my little one to death. Can you even afford the compensation? Mother was stunned by my outburst and stood frozen. The sea pearl powder on her face fell to the ground. You, who did you have this cub with? You are a pure-blood Emojiao of our tribe. How dare you have a child with an outsider? Her gaze fell upon the little ball of fluff in my arms. The little guy seemed to understand mother's words. He blinked his eyes at her, and actually blew out a string of tiny pearl bubbles. Where is that wild man? How dare he touch the pure-blood princess of our clan? I will personally tear down his nest and sink him into the East Sea to serve as a giant turtle. I looked on, seeing mother looking like she was facing a great enemy. I blocked her with my tail. Dragons are naturally lustful, and we merfolk aren't much different. Back in her day, my mother was known for charming spirits across the 4 seas. Does she want to steal my cute baby? Or does she see how handsome the father is and want to cause trouble? What are you doing? Look how cute our baby is. You won't find another like him in all the realms. Mother was so choked by my words her eyes rolled back. I'm mad that you have no ambition. Having a child with an outsider shames our family. I think my mother has stayed in the deep sea for too long. She's forgotten the power of Yen Kanglin, the human ship king. His bay of 10,000 ships. The sails alone could cover half of the East Sea. Forget tearing down his nest. You'd be surrounded by his fleet before you even got close. Besides, the baby is already born now. I can't let him grow up fatherless, can I? I spoke leisurely while holding the child. Don't just focus on scolding me. Look at the history of childbearing in our family. Weren't you flirting with the West Sea Night Watchman as soon as you came of age? I only have one. What about your record back then? Mother's face instantly turned bright red, and her eyes darted around nervously. The boar spirit of the South Sea fought the ice crystals just for you. Who in the 4 seas hasn't heard of your reputation, Consort Jiao? How do you have the nerve to call me reckless? I was young and foolish, a momentary lapse in judgment. I just don't want you to repeat my mistakes. I mostly just flirted, I didn't actually commit. I held my little mare boy, and gave mother a massive eye roll. I didn't believe a single word she said. Right now, if I just swam a lap around the 4 seas, I could feel countless vibrations of bloodline connections. Without a doubt, those are all my mother's masterpieces from the past. Except she gave birth but never raised them. She either threw them to the other party, or left them in the ocean, leaving them to fate. Unlike me, both my parents are purebred Emojiao, making me 100% pure-blooded, guaranteed and authentic. Even though my cub's father is human, he is at least the leader of his kind, handsome and powerful. Look at our child. He has the agility of the merfolk and the handsomeness of a human. His new silver pearl mark can even spit spiritual bubbles. His talent is even better than mine. Mother's gaze fell upon the little fellow. The little guy seemed to feel her stare, and spat out another string of bubbles. The bubbles landed on mother's coral curtains, actually wrapping them in a faint bioluminescent glow. Before she left, she didn't forget to throw out one last threat. I'll settle the score with that wild man sooner or later. And as for this little brat, don't let me catch him being anything less than perfect, or I'll deal with both of you. I watched her walk away, pouting my lips. How could he not be perfect? She probably already adores him. The little fellow snuggled in my arms and gave a tiny yawn. His small head rested on my arm. As he slowly fell asleep, I gently patted his back, planning in my mind. The child is already born. He can't just stay in the deep sea forever. not even knowing who his father is. That Yen Kanglin is the father, after all. I can't let him get away with it for free, pretending he doesn't have a kid. At the very least, he needs to reimburse me for the pregnancy and childcare costs. He also needs to acknowledge his roots and provide a safety net for our son. If he doesn't have money, he could give me a few of those treasure ships that can smash through reefs. If that's not possible, he could introduce me to a few human brothers as handsome as him. I'm quite generous. I'm not picky about species. Let's go. I rummaged through my storage space, stuffing in a bunch of deep-sea pearls, coral nectar, and a few clear water beads. After all, for a mere person to go ashore, preparation is key. I also found a piece of 1,000-year-old warm jade, carved it into a tiny cradle, lined it with 3 layers of mare silk, and placed the little fellow inside. In the human world, mare silk is a treasure worth more than gold. I used 3 layers mainly because I'm afraid my boy will get bumped. Secondly, I'm afraid the rough things of the human world will scratch him. My shy little fellow was sleeping soundly. His tiny tail twitched occasionally. It was absolutely adorable. Everything was ready. I flicked my tail and swam toward the surface. Breaking through the waves, I transformed into human form. My ink-black hair reached down to my waist, and my skin had that unique merfolk pale glow. These legs are still a bit clumsy to use. I used mare arts to protect the warm jade cradle in my arms. Inside, the little guy was still sleeping peacefully. There was a ferry port on the human coast. The seaside ferry was different from the deep-sea palaces. Here, everything was made of sand. Stepping on it felt soft and strange. After 2 steps, I almost slipped and fell on my butt. Luckily, my reflexes were fast, and I braced myself against a nearby reef. My boy, the roads in your father's territory are truly hard to walk. Once we find your father, we'll have him pave a Mare Mountain road for us. Only then will it be comfortable to walk. The little guy smacked his lips, turned over, and continued to sleep. It seems he agrees by default. At the Wanghai ferry, there were many ferry boats. They were different from the mare ships in the deep sea. These boats were made of wood, wobbling back and forth, but they were cheap. You could board for just 2 spiritual stones. And it goes straight to Yen Kanglin's base at Van Boat Bay. I had only ridden one of these once before. It was 3 years ago after I sank Yen Kanglin's treasure ship. I secretly followed him and took one once. I didn't expect that after all these years, the price hadn't even gone up. How honest of him. I walked up to the ferry boat, pulled out 4 spiritual stones and handed them over. The old ferryman was stunned. Young lady, 2 stones are enough for 1 person. I pointed to the warm jade cradle in my arms. I am not alone. I have my son here too. Even though he is small, he is still a living being. I can't let him ride for free, can I? The old man looked at the cradle in my arms, then looked back at me, with a very strange expression. But he still took the stones. Miss, sit over there. I sat down steadily with the cradle. I have to admit, although this ferry is crude, it's much faster than swimming by yourself. And you don't have to use any energy. It's effortless and comfortable. One of these days, I'll kidnap a human carpenter to our palace, and have him build me my own private ship. It should be covered in coral and pearls, able to travel in the sea, and also powerful enough to traverse the land. Only then would it be worthy of my status as a mere princess, and keep my son comfortable. As I was sitting there, imagining myself and the boy in our exclusive carriage, traveling the realms to pick out handsome men, a shrill voice drifted over from the side. What's wrong with you? One person taking up 2 seats, holding some broken jade box. Looking so pathetic, are you trying to scam people for money? I frowned and turned my head toward the voice. I saw a fat man dressed in silk clothes. His face was covered in grease, and his eyes were ogling me lecherously. That look. It was uglier than the deep-sea monstrosity, Zhang Yujing. The little one in my arms seemed to be disturbed by the noise. His tiny brow furrowed, and he let out a soft whine. My anger flared up instantly. I looked at the fat man and said coldly, so ugly. What? Why are you insulting me out of nowhere? I gave you a kind reminder and you dare insult me? I rolled my eyes. Who's insulting you? I don't insult people. I'm just being honest. And I have a child with me, fighting for a seat with a mother and child. How low class. I gently patted the cradle, soothing the little guy inside. He slowly drifted back to sleep. Hearing my words, everyone on the ferry turned their gazes toward us. They began to look the fat man up and down, their eyes full of contempt. At this moment, I had to thank that man, the ship king. Since he became the leader of the human ship kings, he started implementing some kind of moral and ethics education along the coast. He even set a rule. Those who bully the elderly, the weak, or pregnant women will be cast into the sea. His rules were simple and brutal. If your character is bad, it's fine. You can change. If you don't dare to change, that's fine too. I'll just find someone to throw you into the East Sea to feed the turtles. After all, he is Yen Kanglin, the #1 ship king in the world. His Van Boat Bay is the world's #1 port. If you don't like it, you're welcome to bring your fleet and try to raid his port. I must say, His temperament really suits my taste. That's why I was so eager to sink his ship the moment I came of age, and spirit him away to the deep sea. The fat man turned bright red under everyone's gaze, turning from embarrassment to rage. You look like a girl who just came of age. With your delicate skin, you look nothing like a mother. I think you're just faking it to scam people. I gave a mocking laugh, and raised my hand to manifest the mere pearl mark on my forehead. It was an ink-black pearl mark, shimmering with a faint blue light. As the mere pearl mark appeared, my aura as a pure-blood emojiao was instantly released. It filled the entire small ferry boat. The little guy in my arms, sensing my energy, his own silver pearl mark also flashed between his brows, echoing my mere pearl mark. A powerful water spiritual energy wrapped in mere pressure instantly turned the fat man's face deathly pale. His legs gave out and he knelt down directly. Immortal, spare my life. Immortal, spare my life. The others were also affected by this aura. Their faces turned white as sheets. Someone's teacup fell directly onto the deck, shattering into pieces. Some even had their protective jade amulets, shattered directly by the pressure, falling to the ground, with a crisp sound. Seeing this, I immediately withdrew the mere pearl mark in a panic, and dissipated the pressure. I forgot that humans are so fragile. That was just a tiny bit of aura I released casually. It wouldn't even scare a small mere child in the deep sea. I didn't expect humans wouldn't be able to handle it, and I almost disturbed my son. I hurriedly stood up to apologize. I'm sorry. I didn't do it on purpose. I didn't know humans were so fragile. I thought you would at least be like my little silver fish, just getting a little startled at most. I didn't expect you'd be scared like this. While apologizing, I started taking out some trinkets I didn't need from my storage realm. I gave them as compensation to those whose talismans I broke. They were things found everywhere in the deep sea, like thumb-sized pearls, bits of coral nectar, and a few ordinary sea beads. They were all things piled in the corners of my storage room, nearly gathering dust and worth very little. After all, in the deep sea, you can gather a whole pile of these pearls and corals anywhere. I usually use them to feed the fish. I placed these things into their hands. The people who were originally pained by their broken talismans saw the pearls and corals in their hands, and their faces instantly showed shock. Their eyes grew larger than copper bells, and their mouths hung open wide enough to fit an egg. Looking at their expressions, I asked tentatively and cautiously, is it too cheap? Actually, I was also feeling a little stingy. Even though these things aren't valuable, I still spent half a day gathering them. If they thought it was too little, I really didn't want to take out the good stuff. But on second thought, those protective talismans of theirs were as fragile as seashells on the beach. They must be very hard to make. They broke before I even touched them, so they must be extremely difficult to craft. This compensation should be enough, right? Before I could finish speaking, those people suddenly launched themselves from their chairs, and with a thud, they all knelt before me in unison. The grace of the Great One in bestowing such holy treasures. This humble one will remember it forever. This divine mere breath has greatly improved this humble one's water attribute cultivation. Thank you for your great kindness, Great One. They kowtowed so hard the floor echoed. I was stunned and just stood there frozen, still clutching a small pearl I hadn't given away yet. This doesn't seem right, does it? Shouldn't they be saying those broken things were expensive, and that my junk isn't worth anything, demanding that I give them better stuff? Why are they kneeling? Not just the people I gave things to, but even those I didn't give anything to, who were just caught in the aura, also dropped to their knees with a thud. They each shouted that they wanted to serve me as slaves, and some even said they'd become my death-sworn guards, following me for life, ready to go through fire and water without hesitation. What is mere breath? Isn't that just the air I breathe? Can this stuff really improve cultivation? And what is a death-sworn guard? Can they help me find a handsome man? If they can, keeping 2 of them might not be a bad idea. After all, I still have to take my son to travel the realms, to find handsome brothers. Having someone to run errands would be good. I was surrounded by them, not knowing what to do. Finally, I just waved my hand. Fine, fine. Everyone, get up. No need for death-sworn guards. As long as you don't fight me for my seat, and don't disturb my son, it's fine. Hearing my words, they felt like they'd been granted a great amnesty, hurriedly stood up, and stood respectfully to the side. They didn't even dare to sit down anymore. Each of them lowered their heads, not even daring to breathe loudly. The atmosphere on the ferry boat instantly became eerie. No one dared to speak. There was only the sound of oars hitting the water, and the trembling rhythmic sound of the old ferryman. I sat back in my seat, gently patting the cradle in my arms, muttering to myself that humans are truly strange. But they seem quite kind-hearted. You give them some worthless trinkets, and they're ready to give you their lives. They are much more honest than those spirits in the deep sea. As we neared Van Boat Bay, one of the burly men, who looked like a martial artist, handed me a palm-sized model ship. It was made entirely of white jade, inlaid with gold pearls, and looked very exquisite. Great One. This is a top-tier spiritual treasure this humble one obtained by chance. The sea-crossing boat can carry people and goods. It can also repel water and resist fire. I offer it to you as a small token of my gratitude. I took the little white jade ship. It felt nice in my hand. It was just the right size to fit my warm jade cradle. So I nodded with satisfaction. I placed the cradle inside. By the way, from my storage realm, I grabbed a handful of phoenix feathers. I didn't put them in to protect my son, but because I was afraid my son's warm jade cradle was too hard and might break this sea-crossing boat spiritual treasure. After all, my son's things are all treasures from the deep sea, much more precious than this white jade boat. Speaking of which, those phoenixes are so stingy. Back when I was at the southern heavenly gate, I plucked a few of their feathers to use as padding for my pearl bed. In the end, those phoenixes screeched like crazy, chasing me for 3,000 miles. They insisted that I use my mare tail to pet their heads before they would finally quiet down. What a bunch of little troublemakers. Getting off the ferry, I took a deep breath. I finally got away from those humans who had suddenly become exceptionally enthusiastic. They pestered me the whole way, insisting on giving me things. My storage realm is almost full. I held the white jade sea-crossing boat protectively in front of me. Inside, the little fellow was still sleeping soundly, his tiny chest rising and falling gently. Van Boat Bay truly lived up to its name. As far as the eye could see, there were only ships. The sails, large and small, linked together to block out the sun. The bluestone roads by the docks were filled with merchants. The shouts of sailors and the cries of street vendors rose and fell. It was incredibly lively, much livelier than the market in our palace. But the smell wasn't very good. It was full of the smell of fish and sweat. Nothing like the fresh seawater of the deep sea. I stood by the dock, looking up into the distance, and I could see the main residence of Van Boat Bay, Yen Kanglin's Ship King Manor. It was built on a small hill by the sea, green tiles and white walls, upturned eaves and sharp corners, with a tall sea-viewing tower. It's said that standing on the tower, one can see the sails of the entire East Sea. I have to admit, it's quite grand, though still a bit inferior to our palace. Our coral shops are all built with 1,000-year red coral. The floors are paved with pearls, and sea beads hang from the ceilings. When they light up at night, they're more beautiful than the stars. When the time comes, I'll have Yen Kanglin take a few bricks from his manor, and from my third Greytance Dragon Palace realm, I'll bring 2 10,000-year corals to plug in. It will definitely look much better than it does now, and it will be worthy of our sons. Status. To clarify, only my third Greytance Dragon Palace is in the sea. My family's mare palace is not exactly in the sea. It's in the deep trenches of the East Sea. However, the roof of my mare palace also has coral from my third great aunt. Long live coral. The last time I sank Yen Kanglin's treasure ship was on the East Sea surface outside Van Boat Bay. So this is my first time coming to Van Boat Bay, and also my first time at the Ship King Manor. As soon as I reached the main gate of the Ship King Manor, I was stopped by 2 guards in black athletic gear. They held long sabers in their hands, watching me with vigilant eyes. Halt. Outsiders are prohibited from entering the Ship King Manor. Bystanders, leave at once. Me, an outsider? I'm carrying your master's offspring. Even though I was the one who sank your master's boat and abducted him. The Ship King Manor shouldn't turn their backs on me like this, right? But since it's my first visit, I have to leave a good impression on my cub's father. I can't just tear down his gate right from the start. After all, I still need to ask him for child support money. Alright, I'm leaving. Don't be angry, you too, I said, while my mouth kept moving, secretly pulling out a palm-sized small hammer from my storage realm. This is my specially made magical memory dissipation hammer. 1 hit, 1 success. You forget everything after being hit. It's much more useful than the Demon Clan's carefree umbrella. I tapped the ground with my toe, using water spiritual energy to teleport behind them. I raised my hand and hit them. After 2 crisp thumping sounds, the 2 guards rolled their eyes and fell down straight as boards, without even making a groan. Done. I grabbed the 2 guards, secretly dragging them behind the nearby rockery, and found a hidden spot to stash them away. Then, I took out 2 puppets from my storage realm. I swiped these from the Demon Lord's palace. They can transform into human shapes, and even perform simple speech and tasks. They'll come in handy right now. I tapped the puppets, and they instantly transformed into the likeness of the 2 guards, standing motionless at the main gate, looking exactly like the real ones. I'm truly a kind person. Seeing how tired they were on guard duty, I used puppets to help them, allowing them to have a good rest and sleep. How thoughtful. As a reward, I'll borrow one of your outfits to use. And having a quick peek isn't too much, right? I stripped the clothes off one of the guards and put them on myself. The black athletic gear fits quite well, but the fabric is too poor. It's all coarse cloth, not nearly as comfortable as my mare garments. Ugh, so small. This one is even smaller. I shouldn't have looked, it hurts my eyes. Having changed my clothes, I walked boldly into the Ship King Manor, muttering to myself, Yen Kanglin's Ship King Manor is just too big. It's all winding corridors and rockeries. It's harder to navigate than the coral maze in our palace. I walked along the bluestone path of the manor, looking around everywhere. Aside from a few maids sweeping the floor, and a handful of patrolling guards, there wasn't even anyone to talk to. It was quite desolate. Does the Ship King Manor only have this many people? I quickened my pace, and stopped a maid carrying tea. She was wearing a light green RU skirt, looking quite timid. I just returned from patrolling outside. Where has everyone in the manor gone? I spoke in a roughened voice, mimicking a human guard, while carefully protecting the white jade sea crossing boat in my arms. Brother guard, you look very unfamiliar. You aren't from the manor, are you? Also, today is the Great Master's Van Boat Assembly. Everyone in the manor has gone to the docks to help out. How could you not know? Damn, I'm exposed. I didn't feel like wasting words with her, so I raised my hand, took out my little hammer, and gave her head a gentle tap. The maid's eyes rolled, and she fainted. I dragged the sleeping maid toward the nearby flower bed. Fortunately, there are few people here and no one saw. Otherwise, it would be a hassle. If my cub gets woken up, I won't let those people off easily. I had just hidden the maid behind the flower bed and wanted to catch my breath, when a voice drifted over from behind me. What are you doing? My heart skipped a beat. I looked up. A young man in a cyan tight-fitting robe was standing not far away, holding a folding fan. He looked gentle and refined, likely a manager or something of the Ship King Manor. Great, caught again. I gave a couple of dry laughs, trying to muddle through. I say, young master. This girl suddenly fell asleep. Do you believe that? The young man frowned and took 2 steps forward. Your behavior is suspicious. You aren't a guard of this manor at all. Come with me to see the Lord. Before he could finish, I teleported behind him, raised my hand, and brought the hammer down. Forget it, just bear with it for a bit. Well, another one's asleep. The people of this Ship King Manor really love to sleep. Each one is so lethargic. When I see Yen Kanglin later, I'll have to have a word with him about managing his servants better. I can't have them sleeping just anywhere. It creates such a bad impression. Speaking of which, back then I only sank Yen Kanglin's ship and abducted him to the deep sea. I didn't even know what his name was. It was only later I heard from the deep sea's pathfinders that the leader of the human ship kings was named Yen Kanglin. That's how he got a name. As for what he looks like, I remember that crystal clear. After all, you can't forget a man that handsome after one look. After settling the sleeping young master and the maid, I waved my hand, using my magic to transform my clothes into the same light green color the maid wore. My hair fell loose in the RU skirt style, making me look like a human woman. After all, stripping a girl and leaving her by the road. I still felt a bit bad about that. Though I am a mere person. I am a mere person with principles. That maid said today is the Van Boat Assembly. It sounds like a bunch of ship merchants gathering together to drink and brag, and possibly fight. I love watching humans fight the most. It's much more interesting than watching the octopus spirits and squid spirits fight in the deep sea. I'm going to join the fun. My child, we'll find your father in a bit. First, follow your mother to see some drama and join the crowd. I patted the white jade sea crossing boat in my arms. The little fellow inside rolled over and smacked his lips. But your mother fully respects your opinion. If you're unwilling, just shake your head. I waited for a long time, but the little fellow lying in the white jade sea crossing boat didn't move at all. Not even a slight wiggle, let alone shaking his head. Good. Then come with your mother to join the fun. I turned happily and headed toward the docks. As I walked, I muttered to myself, not forgetting to take out a deep-sea pearl from my storage realm. I peeled it and began to eat. The meat was tender and sweet, much better than human candy. It was just a bit dry for my throat. I casually scooped a mouthful of water from a nearby pond to drink, instantly feeling much more comfortable. The white jade sea crossing boat in my hand was shielded tightly by me, for fear of being bumped by passers-by. Arriving at the side gate of the Ship King Manor, I happened to see a group of maids carrying tea toward the docks. I quickly followed them, blending into the crowd, heading all the way to the docks of Van Boat Bay. The docks were even livelier. A high platform had been set up, with tables and chairs placed on it. The surroundings were filled with ship merchants in silk clothes, along with many sailors in athletic gear. I rubbed my belly. I was getting a bit hungry. After all, I hadn't eaten anything since leaving the deep sea. I took out a snack from my storage realm, exchanged it for a stick of candied hawthorns, and took a bite. It was sweet and sour, quite tasty. I brought the candied hawthorn to the jade boat. My boy, take a taste. But you're still small. If you can't eat it, your mother will eat it for you. As I ate the candied hawthorns, I looked up at the platform, trying to find where Yen Kanglin was. After all, he's the ship king. He'd definitely be in the center of the platform. Sure enough, a man was sitting right in the middle of the platform, wearing a black silk robe, with a jade belt around his waist. A black jade pendant hung from the belt. He sat there with his chin resting on one hand. It was precisely that ship king leader I'd abducted to the deep sea, Yen Kanglin. I hadn't seen him in 3 years. And he was still so handsome. Handsomer than any spirit in the deep sea. I truly didn't pick the wrong man. My cub's father's looks are top tier. It wasn't a loss. I stood in the crowd holding the white jade sea crossing boat, ogling him, muttering to myself, how could such a handsome man have been abducted by me sinking his ship? I guess my charm is just too great. Even the human ship king couldn't resist. Just as I was swooning, Yen Kanglin on the platform suddenly looked up, his gaze sweeping over, and landing right on me. Our eyes met, and my heart skipped a beat. I almost dropped the candied hawthorns in my hand. Crap, I've been spotted. Yen Kanglin's gaze stayed on me, for a few seconds. A flash of doubt appeared in his eyes, as if I looked unfamiliar, yet also as if he'd seen me somewhere before. I quickly lowered my head and pretended to eat the hawthorns, my heart pounding. It wasn't that I was afraid of him. I just felt a bit guilty. After all, back then I was the one who sank his ship, drugged him, and abducted him to the deep sea. Strictly speaking, I was in the wrong. But then I thought, I bore him a son. He's the one in the wrong. Why should I feel guilty? I raised my head again to meet his gaze, even arching an eyebrow at him, crunching the candied hawthorns loudly. The little fellow in my arms seemed to sense the oddness in the air. The silver pearl mark on his brow flickered gently. Yen Kanglin's brow furrowed. He stood up, spoke a few words to a man who looked like a steward, standing beside him, then stepped down from the platform, and walked straight toward me. The ship merchants and sailors around us, seeing the great lord walking down, all lowered their heads, not even daring to breathe loudly. The once rowdy docks instantly quieted down. Yen Kanglin stopped in front of me, looking down at me. He was more than a head taller than me, and his shadow enveloped me. He carried a faint scent of seawater and ink, which smelled very nice. Who are you? Why are you at my van boat assembly, carrying such heavy water spiritual energy? As expected of the ship king, traveling at sea all year round, he's so sensitive to water spiritual energy. He can even detect the mare aura I've hidden. Perhaps, he even sensed the aura of the cub in my arms. I stopped pretending. I waved my hand, dispelling the illusion on my body, restoring my original appearance. My ink-black long hair fell against my cold white skin. My eyes held the unique allure of the merfolk. I still held that white jade sea-crossing boat, with my precious cub inside. Yen Kanglin, long time no see. I smiled, revealing 2 small dimples, exactly like his dimples. When Yen Kanglin saw my appearance, his pupils constricted sharply, his eyes full of shock. He seemed to recall what happened 3 years ago. He was stunned for a long time before speaking, his voice somewhat raspy. That mare girl who sank my Kanglin how? What do you mean, sank your Kanglin how? Clearly it was your ship that wasn't sturdy enough. It sank with one bump. Can you blame me? 3 years ago, I only used my tail to gently tap the bottom of his ship. Consequently, that Kanglin how, claimed to be unsinkable, immediately took on water and sank. I really can't be blamed. It was his ship's poor quality. Yen Kanglin's mouth twitched, as if he remembered the scenes from back then. His face turned pale and then flushed. Back then, when his Kanglin how sank, he fell into the sea, wrapped in a powerful water spiritual energy, and was brought to a coral cave in the deep sea, where he met a beautiful mare girl, which was me. During those few days, he was treated with good food and drink in the deep sea, but I wouldn't let him leave. He originally thought it was just a dream. After all, how could there be such a beautiful mare person in the world? And why would she happen to take a fancy to him? He didn't expect it to actually be true. His gaze fell upon the white jade sea-crossing boat in my arms, looking at the warm jade cradle inside. The little fellow in the cradle had woken up at some point, and was watching him with big, dark, grape-like eyes. The silver pearl mark on his brow flickered, and he spat out a string of small pearl bubbles. The bubbles floated in front of Yen Kanglin and gently popped, releasing a faint water spiritual energy that blended with the sea scent on him. Yen Kanglin's eyes were instantly filled with disbelief. He had lived for over 20 years, seen all kinds of people, from immortals in the heavenly court, to spirits in the deep sea, but he never thought he would actually have a child with a mare person, especially such a tiny little mare child. What is this? His voice was even trembling a bit. He reached out, wanting to touch the little fellow, yet afraid of hurting your cub. Yen Kanglin, I am Princess Jiaoshi of the Mare tribe. This is my child with you. I've come today to let him acknowledge his roots, and incidentally, to get some child support money. The little fellow seemed to understand my words. He softly called out Daddy to Yen Kanglin. That one word, Daddy, was soft and crisp, striking right at Yen Kanglin's heart. He looked down at the little fellow in the cradle. The little one had the same ink-black hair as mine, eye corner lines, and dimples exactly like his. The silver pearl mark on his brow glowed with silver light, and his tiny tail flicked gently. Yen Kanglin's gaze slowly turned from shock to tenderness. He carefully extended a finger, and touched the little fellow's tiny cheek. The little one wasn't shy at all. He rubbed his tiny head against his finger. A human and a mere person. How could they possibly have a child? How could it not be possible? I am a pure-blooded mere princess. And you are a human leader. Both of our genes are excellent. The cub we produced is definitely the handsomest little mere person in all the seas. Look how talented he is. He can even spit spirit bubbles. Yan Kanglin fell silent. He stood there for a long time without speaking, seemingly digesting this news today. Yet he couldn't bear to leave. His eyes were locked tightly onto the little fellow in the cradle. The ship merchants and sailors around were all stunned, each lowering their heads, not daring to speak. Yet their hearts were in an uproar. The great lord actually had a child with a mere person. And it was such a cute little mere child. If this got out, the entire four seas would be in an uproar. Seeing Yan Kanglin's silent state, I grew a bit impatient. Are you going to acknowledge him or not? If not, I'll just take the cub back to the deep sea to raise myself. From now on, this cub will take my surname, Jiao. And not yours, Yan. Also, what you did to my... Oh, right. The ship of yours I sank will count as we're even. From now on, we owe each other nothing. As I said this, I prepared to turn and leave. Though I felt a bit panicked inside. If he really didn't acknowledge us, wouldn't I have given birth for nothing? The child support money would be gone too. That would be a huge loss. And our cub can't be without a father either. The moment I turned, Yan Kanglin grabbed my wrist. His palm was warm. And his grip was strong. His grip hurt my wrist a bit. Yet he was also being careful for fear of hurting me. My child, how could I not acknowledge him? Jiaoshi, I'm sorry. Regarding the matters 3 years ago, it was my oversight. I left you to give birth and raise our cub alone in the deep sea. It's been hard on you. Hearing his words, the weight in my heart was lifted. At least he acknowledged us. The child support is secured. And our cub finally has a father. It's good that you know it was hard. So, what about the child support money? We mere folk, when raising cubs, need to eat 1,000-year pearls and drink 10,000-year nectar. And we need to use deep-sea warm jade for the cradle. All of these are very expensive. You decide what to do. Also, our cub doesn't have a name yet. As the father, you should at least give him a name, right? Yan Kanglin looked at my money-loving state. Then looked at the little fellow in the cradle smiling at him. And couldn't help but laugh. The dimples at the corners of his mouth appeared. And I started swooning again. Don't worry, I won't mistreat you or the child. Come, return with me to the manor. I'll give you whatever you want. As for the name, I'll think of it. I'll definitely give our cub the most beautiful name. I nodded, delighted in my heart. I followed Yan Kanglin toward the Ship King Manor. The little fellow in my arms was snuggled in the warm jade cradle, extending a small hand toward Yan Kanglin. Yan Kanglin carefully held his tiny hand, creating a very heartwarming scene. I muttered to myself. It seems coming to the human world this time was the right choice. The two of us will have someone to rely on from now on. Eating and drinking the best. With countless treasures. I followed Yan Kanglin happily back to the Ship King Manor. He took me directly to his residence, the Wanghai Tower. This building was built at the highest point of the manor. Pushing open the door, one could see the entire East Sea. The view was excellent. Yan Kanglin ordered the side hall of the Wanghai Tower to be prepared for the cub and me to stay in. He also had various treasures brought in. Gold, silver, pearls, and agates were piled on the table. There were also several exquisite ship models, all made of Phoebesian non-wood and white jade. There was even a miniature ship specifically made for the little fellow. It was extremely delicate. Take these for now. If it's not enough, just tell me. Tell me whatever you and the cub need. I'll have people fetch it from the East Sea. Even if it's 1,000-year red coral from the deep sea. Or 10,000-year sea pearls, I can get them for you. Also, I've thought of the child's name. He will be called Yan Zhulan. He will take my surname, Yan. Zhu as in pearl, referring to a mere pearl. And Lan as in my Kanglin Hao. What do you think? Yan Zhulan, that name sounds quite nice. I looked at the little fellow in the cradle and called, Zhulan. Yan Zhulan, the little fellow, seemed to like this name. He blinked his eyes, spat out a string of bubbles, and called Daddy to Yan Kanglin. Zhulan. Yan Kanglin's eyes instantly lit up, his smile reaching his eyes. He took the little fellow from my arms, cradling him carefully in his own. The little fellow snuggled in his embrace, his tiny tail gently brushing against his arm. It was so soft and sweet. Even the servants around couldn't help but smile. I said happily, enough, enough. But Zhulan's cradle needs to be made a bit larger. Also, I can't be without water. You have to renovate the pond in the side hall. To mimic the deep-sea environment. There must be a continuous flow of seawater. And the temperature must be the same as in the deep sea. Also, the food Zhulan and I eat must come from the deep sea. I rambled on with a long list of demands. Yan Kanglin listened patiently and had the butler write it all down. Yan Kanglin didn't seem to mind at all. He fulfilled every request Zhulan and I made. And even added quite a few extras. For example, he had a whole set of toys. Made of deep-sea warm jade for Zhulan. Small coral ships. Small pearl fish. They were incredibly delicate. He even made me a jiao jiao quilt. more exquisite than my own. He even had a pure gold ship built, so I could take Julan for a row. Julan and I began a life of luxury in the Ship King Manor, where every need was provided for. Every day, we ate deep-sea delicacies and played with all sorts of treasures. Julan was spoiled to the core by Yen Kanglin. He was carried wherever he went, for fear he might get a single bump or scratch. Yen Kanglin even had a small jiao pouch specially made to wrap Julan inside. It was very comfortable. Every day, after finishing his work with the ships, he would come to the Wanghai Tower to accompany me and Julan. Sometimes he would hold Julan by the window to watch the view of the East Sea, teaching him to recognize the sails. Sometimes he would ask me about the deep sea, listening to my stories of sea monsters across the 4 seas. Sometimes he would teach me human characters and rules. Julan would nestle beside us, occasionally spitting out a string of bubbles, making us burst into laughter. Human characters are too complicated, much harder than the bubble script of the merfolk. Humans have so many rules too. How to sit properly, how to speak softly. One can't just flick one's tail or release an aura at will. It's so troublesome. But Julan learned fast. At his young age, he already recognized many human characters. He would even imitate Yen Kanglin's mannerisms, holding a tiny folding fan to fan himself. He looked absolutely adorable. One time, I saw a rabbit in the Ship King Manor's garden, and thought it was cute, so I wanted to catch it to play with, but the rabbit ran away. As I chased the rabbit, I accidentally released a bit of my merfolk aura. It withered all the flowers and grass in the garden, and scared a passing maid so much that she fainted. Julan, nestled in Yen Kanglin's arms, watched me run, shouting with his little mouth. Yen Kanglin rushed over when he heard the commotion. Seeing the messy garden, and the rabbit in my hands, he ruffled my hair. Cece, run a bit slower. Don't scare the servants. I curled my lip and let the rabbit go. This rabbit runs too fast. It's no fun at all. It's not as well behaved as the little silver fish in the deep sea. Yen Kanglin looked at me and said, in the future, I'll accompany you and Julan back to the deep sea, to catch a whole ship's worth of silver fish, for you to play with as much as you want. Daddy and Mommy, let's go home. Julan, meanwhile, rubbed his little head against Yen Kanglin's chin, calling out softly. His embrace was so warm. But the good days didn't last long before trouble arrived. This day, Yen Kanglin and I were with Julan, rowing the gold ship in the pond. He held a mini oar, spitting out bubbles every now and then. Suddenly, I sensed a powerful merfolk aura, coming from the sea, getting closer and closer. My heart skipped a beat. Oh no, my mother is here. Sure enough, in the next second, huge waves surged across the entire Wanchuan Bay. The ships by the docks were tossed about by the swells. Even in the pond of the Ship King Manor, the water began to churn. The Mare Mother emerged from the sea with Prime Minister Turtle, and several merfolk guards. They took human form in the manor's courtyard. Jiaoshi, you wretched girl, running off to fool around with some wild man. And you even brought Julan along. See if I don't skin you alive. I quickly jumped off the gold ship. Yen Kanglin held Julan, protecting both of us behind him. Julan nestled in Yen Kanglin's arms, looking at the Mare Mother and recognizing her as his grandmother. He called out softly, Grandma. That one word Grandma instantly dissipated more than half of the Mare Mother's rage. Her gaze fell upon Julan, and her eyes went wide and round. She lowered her coral staff. She walked over quickly, looking at Julan with great care. Is this Julan, my precious grandson? Julan wasn't afraid of the Mare Mother at all. He smiled at her, and blew another string of bubbles. The bubbles landed on the Mare Mother's coral staff, shimmering with light. The Mare Mother's heart was instantly melted by Julan. The anger on her face vanished without a trace. My precious grandson is so adorable. Much cuter than your mother was when she was little. Seeing this, I rolled my eyes. Yen Kanglin stepped forward, and bowed to the Mare Mother with hands clasped. Mother-in-law, your son-in-law Yen Kanglin pays his respects. Holding Julan, the Mare Mother froze for a moment. Who is your mother-in-law? I haven't acknowledged you as a son-in-law yet. However, for Julan's sake, I'll spare you for now. Yen Kanglin smiled, and gestured to the butler behind him. The butler immediately had several chests brought forward. When opened, they were filled with deep-sea rarities. 1000-year red coral, a clear water divine pearl, a small deep-sea warm jade lock, tiny clothes made of jiao silk, and exquisite pearl necklaces. If mother-in-law is willing, I can take Cece and Julan back to the Mare Palace anytime, to pay respects to the Merfolk ancestors. The Mare Mother looked at the treasures in the chests. As she held Julan, she couldn't hide the smile on her face. At least you know how to be tactful. I'll have to see your future performance. If you dare to mistreat Cece or Julan, I'll still flip your Ship King Manor upside down. The Mare Mother hugged Julan. Grandma is here. Julan is the little treasure of our merfolk. He must visit the Mare Palace often in the future. Let's see who dares to bully him. They'll be making an enemy of the entire merfolk. Yen Kanglin said respectfully. Yes, I will keep your teachings in mind, mother-in-law. Watching the Mermother's duplicitous act, I couldn't help but laugh. The Mermother stayed, with Prime Minister Turtle and the Merfolk guard standing by, claiming to watch over Julan and me, to make sure we weren't deceived by humans. They actually just wanted to stay in the Ship King Manor, play with Julan, and enjoy a life of ease. After the Mermother arrived, life at the Ship King Manor became even more lively. Whatever my little Julan wants, Grandma will give it to him. She even ground her own prized 1,000-year pearls into powder, to make baby food for Julan. This treasure is beautiful. Save it for Julan. She even helped me fleece Yan Kanglin. Yan Kanglin built a coral ship for her, and specifically made a mini coral ship for Julan. Julan, Grandma will take you on a ride in the new ship. Prime Minister Turtle, meanwhile, carried an abacus every day, calculating Yan Kanglin's family wealth. The Yan family's foundation is so thick. We must save up an inheritance for Julan. It's only right to donate some ships and treasures to the Mer Palace. Prime Minister Turtle, you're making things difficult for me. Yan Kanglin would often go with the Mermother, taking Julan out to sea to fish. The Mermother's fishing skills were even better than Yan Kanglin's sailors. She could haul in a whole ship's worth of fish in one go. Julan would blow bubbles every now and then, commanding the schools of fish. He was exceptionally gifted. My lord, your mother-in-law and the young master are like deities. Yan Kanglin's rival, the South Sea merchant Zhao Laosan, brought his fleet to Wanchuan Bay to provoke him. He wanted a boat race with Yan Kanglin. The loser would give up the South Sea trade route. Yan Kanglin has gotten close to the merfolk, losing the human race's face and gaining a weakness. This time I'll definitely seize the South Sea route. You brat, you dare try to snatch a route from my son-in-law? How dare you bully my grandson? I'll make it so you can't even touch the edge of the South Sea. Julan, give Grandma some strength. Let's sink his ship. I don't dare anymore. I'll never dare again. Please, Lord, spare my life. The trade route, the title deed, I'll hand them all over. Zhao Laosan was scared out of his wits, and scrambled away in terror. Because of this incident, Yan Kanglin's status as the Ship King became even more stable. Merchants across the 4 seas all knew. You can offend anyone, but don't offend the Ship King's family. Otherwise, you'll be dealt with by the Mermother and the little Merboy. The water in the East Sea was quite shallow. Yan Kanglin wanted to learn how to breathe underwater like the merfolk, but after practicing for ages, he nearly choked to death in the pond. Daddy is so clumsy. You're way too clumsy. You can't even learn this. You two are still the most capable.